I am feeling the weight of raising children and helping raise children. And I'm realizing the importance of wisdom when we first started raising our children. I knew everything there was to raising children. Today, I don't know what happened to all that stuff I knew. It seems like every day is a new challenge. And it's not because my children are hard to parent. It ties into wisdom. And I would dare say that wisdom is sometimes pretty elusive. And I think it's good for us to maybe take a moment and just make the distinction between wisdom and common sense. Common sense can sometimes be, dare I say, knowledge. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's insight. Sometimes it's just knowledge. Sometimes it's smarts. And these things, wisdom is not. And I hope that comes clear this morning as we look at that. I looked up a little bit just in making that distinction. I looked up what common sense is, and I got a few helps. My apologies, my voice is a little off this morning. See if that helps or not. Listen carefully what common sense. They say mathematics is 90% common sense and the other half is intelligence, if you did the math on that. You've all heard about what claustrophobia is. That's the fear of tight spots. What is the phobia of chainsaw? Anybody know? It's common sense. Another one, the fear of getting married, the phobia of getting married, also common sense. Common sense is like dial-up internet. Remember dial-up internet? It hasn't been used in years. Again, I'm just reading the news. Don't. Is this? Hopefully, this is the last one. Common sense is like deodorant. Those who need it the most don't have it. Sorry for the cynicism about love and marriage, but it does speak to the need for wisdom when it comes to some of those important decisions. But that's not only where wisdom comes in, and I would say I would like for us to think about how practical wisdom is as we gather like we are gathering. So let's go to the text. We're continuing on our journey through James, and we're James chapter 3, verses 13 to 18. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or don't deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. I think there's lots here for us. Let's get into it. Who is wise and understanding among you? This is a call to us, isn't it? Who is James talking to? Who is James writing to? He's talking to the church. He's writing to the church. It's you. And he's calling us to wisdom, to be wise, to seek after it. And he's saying, for those of you who want to be wise, those who want to live in wisdom, we are reminded that if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask of God. But he's going a little further to let us know what it looks like, and that is to show it in our good deeds, in our good life, in our deeds that are done in the humility that comes about from wisdom. So wisdom is shown by, it's lived out. Wisdom just that's rattling around between our ears is not really wisdom. It's lived out. It's shown. It comes out of the well. It's shown in the fruit of the tree. And it says that the deeds are done in humility that comes from wisdom. It seems to be there a very direct link between humility and wisdom. He's saying that if you're going to serve, if your deeds are going to shine, do it in humility. That's a great start. And humility comes from wisdom. Wisdom reminds us of our limitation. Wisdom reminds, I think, I'm not wanting to point out that I'm wise, but I would say that as I seek wisdom, that's how I came to the realization that all that stuff that I thought I knew about parenting, I'm being humbled because humility, because in the practice, in the deeds, in living it out, I'm realizing how much more I need the Lord's wisdom, how much more I need those around me to support me, those around me to provide perspective, to help me with my blind spots, right? Wisdom tells us that we need one another, and especially we need the Lord. Wisdom reminds us that we're not immune to accusations or temptation or pride. But, he goes on to say, but if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. The bitter envy and selfish ambition in our hearts. And he's saying if you're going down that path, you better stop. Do not boast about it. I don't know what's happening in that church that people were boasting about it, but I think what was happening is that there were those that had this selfish ambition, that there were those that were acting out of these impure vantage points, and they were actually taking some pride in it. They were actually reveling in it. They were actually operating out of what they felt was wisdom. And he goes on to say, such wisdom, so-called wisdom, it's you can almost hear him. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly. Okay? Unspiritual. Demonic. Oh my goodness, James, come on. He's almost of the spiritual writers, of the letter writers of the gospel. He's can I say Donald Trump? He's the hyperbolist of them. But it's true. He's saying he's not just making a point. He's saying if you're going down this path, so-called wisdom is so destructive. So let's get back to real wisdom. And there we go. Let's take a positive slant for a moment. The wisdom that comes from heaven, If you're going to ask God and say, hey, I lack wisdom, I'm going to ask of you, God. I'm going to claim your promise that he who lacks wisdom can ask of God, who gives without beating you up for asking. You're asking. He'll deliver. So if you're going to ask God for wisdom and the wisdom from heaven, here's how you can test it, and here's what you can look forward to. First of all, it's pure. Pure means that it's unblemished, it's unadulterated, it's unspoiled, it's not mixed up. It's the pure thing. It's not love mixed with hate. It's not love mixed with bitter envy and selfish ambition. There's not a little bit of this. It's not a little bit of the bad stuff. It's pure. It's pure. And the aspect of not being, looking for the credit or this mixed with a little bit of selfish ambition. When we don't worry about who gets the credit, it's amazing what can happen. And friends, if I can just pause for a second, I am so enjoying this moment, just kind of talking about these things, because I commend you folks. I see wisdom being lived out in our gatherings. And that's what really stirs in my heart. The laboratory that has been Refuel and our gatherings like this and our gatherings during the summer and the connections that we've been making throughout the week. I see wisdom being lived out by a purity that is not seeking, there's not that bitterness, bitter envy or selfish ambition. When people contribute to our refuels, I see a beautiful living out of the graciousness and the wisdom when we embrace the contribution that each of us brings. And then with those tangible gifts, those tangible contributions, I see that reflective of the way we interact with one another. And it's good, folks, it's good. You are being wise, and I love it. And it makes me so, dare I say, proud to be part of this gathering, this group, this family, because we're living it out. So I'm just taking a moment to just commend you that if for any reason you're thinking that I'm pounding the pulpit on the bitter envy and you know what? Hey, if you're reading that mail, that's maybe the Holy Spirit speaking, it's not me. I am commending you for how you are living this out in wisdom. But let's just go a little further here. Peace-loving. Peace-loving, it's good. It's good. This means that what comes from a pure heart is wanting to live in peace. And that sometimes will help us with the radar when we realize, hey, something's not right here. It almost seems like somebody's wanting to stir the pot. Somebody's wanting to kind of like keep us off balance. Peace-loving means that we're wanting to live in peace. We're wanting to have that, cultivate the atmosphere that I just described, that is wisdom, and where we're loving one another and seeing one another as God sees us. Considerate. It's good to be reminded of these things. Considerate means probably looking more outward than inward. How does this affect, how does my actions or my words, how does it affect others? This is what wisdom looks like. And I would say edifying as well. Being considerate means that it's going to build others up. Not just making us look good, but building others up. Submissive. It's a good reminder. Sometimes we want to, especially as leaders in our families or in our groups, we want to kind of dominate. We want to be the voice that is heard, or we want to have the first word. Submissive is, being more in tune with what's going on around. Full of mercy and good fruit. Love it. Impartial. That doesn't take sides. It's not playing favorites. Wisdom is fair. Last one is sincere. It means that it's coming from the heart. It's not a show. It's not just, hey, listen, fake it till you make it. If you're, just test these things, do the best that you can, and it will eventually start to come from the heart. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of peace, of righteousness. The Message says, real wisdom, God's wisdom, begins with a holy life and is characterized by getting along with others. Holy life, getting along with others. It's gentle and reasonable, overflowing with mercy and blessings. Not hot one day and cold the next, not two-faced. You can develop a healthy, robust community, that's us, that lives right with God and enjoys its results only if you do the hard work of getting along with each other, treating each other with dignity and honor. That's James 3 from the Message. So I'm going to give you a quick a visual of what wisdom looks like. And this is my take on it. So this is the human brain. Those of you that thought that it looked otherwise, the human brain is actually this right here. Maybe it's mine, I don't know. So sometimes when I'm deep in thought, that you might smell rubber because the belts are slipping or because the gears are stripping. So I don't know if you can see this, but these arrows are indicating of where things start, and when we have ears to hear or eyes to see. So here's a visual of just remember that when you are processing, when you are interacting with one another, when you hear something, now it might be a thought. It might be a thought about somebody else. It might be something that you're processing that way. When you see something, when you make an observation, what we think sometimes is that whatever is taken in has to rattle around here, and we have to think about it. What I'm suggesting this morning from our text is that what James is wanting us to do is test these things and process them with wisdom. And so, let's say you hear something juicy. I think we talked about, I'm not going to, hang out here too long about gossip or that sort of thing. But, how do I process what I'm taking in, and have wisdom being reflected in my good deeds? Is my vantage point here, is it pure? Is it bringing about peace? Am I loving peace, or is this is this evil ambition where I'm gonna, hey, this could kind of stir the pot here. This could be juicy. Or am I being considerate by even thinking about this, about that person, and down the... So what the visual, if I finish this off, is that we let this go deeper. And in this area that I would suggest is the heart, that is where we process. That is where we weigh things in wisdom. And going back to our list, and so with a sincere heart, in the humility of wisdom, we process this. And then it bubbles up from this spring that hopefully is pure. It's not salt water mixed with fresh water, but it is pure and godly. And I would say that as this happens, I think you know what that I'm talking figuratively here. It's a visual. But as I was thinking about wisdom, this is how I felt that James was wanting us to, stop here doing this. Stop doing this. Do this. Have it, wrestle with it. Test it. Ask the questions. And then, only then, let it bubble up and then maybe process it here and decide, this is the last, this is the gate. Do you lift the gate or do you drop it? Because sometimes that's when the stuff happens, right? Then it comes out in our words. And if this doesn't happen, this process that I'm describing, if it comes in here, and then comes out here, show of hands, I don't need to. I know, folks, every one of you have done this before, and that is, and then you responded without wisdom, and you regretted it. Hey, I'm not suggesting that, hey, show of hands again, how many of you have just been raked over the coal, or somebody called you or dressed you down, and then afterwards you thought, all of these great comebacks and things that you wish you would have said. That's another message for Pastor Nate to deal with, because, maybe you need to say some things, right? But most of the time, particularly when we're interacting with one another, and when we're parenting, and when we're leading, when we're correcting, maybe we're needing to address something with a coworker or a loved one or something. When it comes up, folks, I don't. 9 times out of 10, okay, I'll put odds on it. 9 times out of 10, if you do what I'm suggesting you do, if you do what James is telling you to do, it'll come up and it'll come out, and you won't regret it as much as that one time where you decide. So let me give you a few examples here as I wrap up of here's a quick one that I'm realizing as I get older. I'm not suggesting that I'm actually getting wiser, but we're working on it. A good question. I'm realizing that it's good to ask questions. Sometimes I'm finding that if I stop looking for the answer and start looking to ask the right question, I get better results. And so I've got a few questions here. So as you're wrestling with some of these things, is it wisdom? Is it humility? Or is it proud? I was thinking about, particularly as I wrote these questions, interacting with one another. And so sometimes we might feel that we really need to say something. You ever had that feeling? I just got to say this. And so I hear something, I just really got to say something. And I regret it. Sometimes we need to ask the question, okay, what it is that I need to say or what I need to express, is it wisdom? Is it coming out of humility? And so allowing things to, having things go deeper before I respond. So when we're interacting with one another, this is a good question to ask. Is it really necessary? Do you really have to say that thing? Is it going to make, or maybe it's just going to make you feel better. Maybe that's why you need to say it, right? Has it sprung up after a time of wonder? We encourage with emotionally healthy discipleship that when somebody says something and you feel like you have to say something because that person, like they're off base, or turn to wonder. I wonder why they would say that. And I'm finding more often when I do that, I find out, now I understand their perspective. That makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense for them. I know, I understand what they were saying. And I thought I needed to straighten them out. None of you, it was somebody else. Is it your opinion? You're entitled to your opinion, but you don't have to share it in every situation, right? Maybe it's just an opinion, or maybe it's just a personal taste. I remember, speaking of parenting, by the way, I don't know if you know that Nate and I were just reminiscing that I was a pastor as a young man. I graduated from school and went on to be an itinerant pastor, and then we took a church in Surrey, BC. And after we were done there, we came here, and we were kind of waiting for the phone to ring. And we went to a church, and I don't know why I told you that whole story to tell you this story, but we went to this church, and after church, Sonia and I and Joel, our son, who, by the way, was just a really nice kid, easy to parent and never misbehaved, we went out for dinner, and this person pulled Sonia aside and told her that we weren't disciplining him enough, that he needed a swat on the behind. I don't think that came from here because it was not well received. Like I said, our son could do no wrong, right? And in this case, I would suggest that that person should have allowed it to bubble up from wisdom, and I would suggest that they were expressing their personal taste. They were up in years, we were out for dinner, they had an image to uphold, and in that case, it wasn't really, and I don't know if this is on the next one, but you got to ask the question, am I actually in a position to say what I think I need to say in such a way that they're going to hear it and be built up by it, and they're going to receive it? That's a really good question to ask. So is it edifying? Is it going to be well received? Will it build a person up? Is it going to put God in a good light? That's a really good question to ask sometimes. And that's what it means to glorify God. Are you taking a side? And lastly, is this what love looks like? As I was preparing, I came across a story of how astronauts come back from having experienced this perspective that's called the overview effect. And friends, I think we need wisdom that is, I would characterize as this overview effect. That we begin to see from God's perspective, and I'm not suggesting that God is with us, but His perspective is just out of this world. So astronauts coming back, having seen the Earth from the window of the space shuttle or the space station or so forth, come back just with a totally different perspective. And we need that. And I would suggest that we need this more than ever. So if we look back on these things, I'm going to grab my notes here. If we go back and we think about what this heavenly wisdom looks like, and we put it into the context of the conflict between Israel and Palestine. And we ask ourselves, is what's happening there, is it heavenly wisdom, wisdom that comes from God, or is it earthly wisdom? And so as we process this, as we think about these things, is our perspective pure, peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy, good fruit, impartial? Remember I said that means not taking sides. Sincere. What would it look like if the leaders of the world were to practice this wisdom? What would some of the decisions that they were making, what would it look like? A little closer to home, if we were to think about this in terms of, like we pray for wisdom for our leaders, our counselors, those that are making important decisions in our community. And right now, the important decision about whether to support and to get behind a shelter that can make a difference in people's lives. Take people off the street and give them, first of all, hope that begins with a meal. Are their perspective, our perspective when we think about these issues, is it coming from heavenly wisdom that is pure, peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy? What is mercy? Wanting someone to receive what they need, not what they deserve. How fitting is that? And good fruit, impartial and sincere. It seems to me that our community has been really struggling with the side taking. Wisdom doesn't take sides. If wisdom's going to take a side, it's going to take the side of things like justice. Hey, I'm not taking sides. I just want to see justice. Hey, don't drag me. I'm not going to. Yeah, I hear your point, but I'm on the side of mercy. I'm on the side of wisdom. Hey, I'm just on the side of wanting to help my brother. And when we test our thoughts, when we test our conversations, And, God give you wisdom as you interact with one another and interact in your community and your places of work and so forth, because that's where we need wisdom. So keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job as you interact with one another in wisdom, and God is blessing our gatherings because of that. Sometimes it's a little harder when we get out there, and so hopefully I've given you a few tools. And as I leave you, I just pray, Lord, give us eyes to see. Give us your eyes to see. Lord, give us ears to hear, and what we hear, may we process them from a place of wisdom.